Hello, everyone. Hello, team. How are you?
Good morning. Very good. Thank you.
How are you? I think
Good, good,
everyone
good.
is here now.
Is that what? Everyone's here?
Yeah. We just
Oh, Wendelin.
Hi, Tim.
other.
Great to see you.
Yeah, just like the fairy behind you. So is Philippe here?
Yes, I see him over here.
Okay, great. So it's time. So I suggest Tim and Philippe, you can start your conversation with no further ado. I present you as two great artists who I have been lucky to talk to and to work with and write books together. So, but I imagine you will say better than I will all the interesting things you're doing, and I hope everyone will be really in a position to better know your work later. And so, thank you very much. We're listening to you all.
Okay. Philip is going to start, I think.
Ah. Okay.
Okay. Okay, if I'm the one supposed to start, okay, I'll introduce briefly. So we were really happy that Ellen just thought of us both and invited us to this very interesting session. I mean, interesting for me. So thank you, Ellen, for organizing this. I think it will be a very specific way to approach, I mean, this question of commons and phenomenology. Because first, we are not philosophers, both either me or Tim. And so don't expect a philosophy, a discussion about philosophy and concepts and things like that. But we refer to kind of practice and practicing how an artistic practice could become a way to access the constitution of commons and communities in a sustainable way, which is a very, actual issue. So I mean, Ellen was invited Tim, and you will discover Tim's work, and I will be very short and give the floor to Tim. He will explain you how is an artist in a way that will be questionable and questioning for all of us. And if I've got some time, I can also talk about myself, but very briefly, I prefer leaving the floor to Tim first, just to say I'm also this kind of artist that is doing what we called some kind of 15 years ago when we were starting with friends, what we tried to call organizational art, which is not very precise. Now Tim has forged the term institutional sculpture, which I love. So you see, we are in a very specific trend in arts, which is not phenomenal. If we refer to phenomenology, what I heard this morning about the trends in phenomenology, we are not mainly based on this track about empathy and sharing of emotions that should constitute the community by a face-to-face or visibility of the face or empathy to the pain of the other, but rather on the other around, which should be, I mean, does it exist, or could it be that kind of an a priori feeling of community exists, and should the artists be the ones that are able to tackle not only the emotional connection between selves, but also these mediated and organizational, if I take my topic, my kind of hobby into the discussion, kind of the organizational community feeling, and deal with it as artists and proposing aesthetic experience to the people. So I'll leave the floor to Tim, who will present you what he is doing, because talking is something, but doing, making, and discovering is a necessity. And then we will have I will kind of ask questions to Tim so that he will be able to develop much further. So we will try to keep half an hour for Tim presenting his work and me and having a kind of conversation together, and then we will try to keep at least 20 minutes, 25 minutes for discussing with you. So Tim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Philippe. And just to say that the way that I originally engaged with Philippe and the way that I would still characterize our relationship today is I met Philippe in the context of being an editor and publisher as artist, or artist as editor and publisher. And he has an ongoing publication, that Dysfunction, that he'll probably mention. But I think that his action and his object making is that of you know, if I talk about institutional sculpture, so the institutional sculpture that I would say that Philippe is working with is a newspaper. And a newspaper is fundamentally a means of communication. It has an aesthetic, it has a community, it has a public. And so I would think that I'm now like, my background is originally as a journalist. So I'm sort of like a journalist reporting for Dysfunction. And I think that Dysfunction is very interesting because Dysfunction is like, it's like failure. It's like something that we always are talking about, which is utopia. And utopia is, as you know, it's a place that cannot succeed. It cannot exist. It has to ultimately start with an idea and end up with a reality that lacks success, lacks possibility. So I'm going to show you guys two brief videos about two of the last projects that I worked on. One is no longer operating, so it's now transitioned to documentation and sort of consideration, but it's no longer a functioning project. And the second one is what I'm doing right now, so that's very current. And I will show you a brief video of each one that sort of summarizes them, and then we can talk about both. I'll show you a little bit more of this sort of art extrapolation or visual elements extrapolation from the second project. So the first, and please don't be afraid to interrupt me if you have questions. I tend to talk very quickly and bring a lot of things in because I like to think and try to operate in complexity. Like with the concept of Gaia, that there's this single entity that we're operating within and everything is interconnected. So you'll see that there are a lot of threads coming in various ways, and I think about that as a necessity rather than to simplify to complicate. So that makes it harder to. Wendelin is nodding because Wendelin is also a very complicated fellow. So with no further ado, I will share my screen now, and I'm going to show you, as I said, two brief videos. And these are, I would call them like corporate communications of the project. And this one has some narrative to it. Let me see if I can see. Are you seeing a Vimeo? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it appears on the screen. It's not moving yet, but it appears on the screen.
No, I'll go to full screen here and then and hit play if I can. If it's going to let me do that. It's not in
Tim, we don't get the sound. Tim, if you can hear me. Hi, Tim.
Yeah. Yes.
We don't get the sound of the video.
You're not getting the sound.
No. I think you have to click on something like allowing sound somewhere. I don't know exactly.
My apologies. So it's a setting within Zoom.
Yes, there's something. Does anybody know there is something, a feature that you allow the sound of the video to be disseminated as well, to be diffused, but I cannot remember where it is exactly.
Audio.
Yeah, there is something like audio allowing or audio sharing or something somewhere.
Share screen.
If anybody knows where it is.
Maybe try video settings and the start video button. You click on the little arrow and there's a video settings button, and maybe there you could switch to sound on.
Or is it on your own computer, maybe?
No, I think it's in specificity.
Yeah, because we hear you. So
Yeah.
I have another idea. I can send you all the link in the chat, and you can watch it on your own screens. Is that a good idea?
Of course, that is a solution.
Yeah.
It's a bit risky, but
Share. You need to click. You need to click on share computer sound. I don't know where it is.
Share computer sound.
Yes.
See, I'm looking at virtual background. I'm looking at share screen, and I'm looking at video, and I'm looking at audio, and I'm not seeing it in any of those.
Okay.
I love this little deer, though. It's lovely.
Oh.
And as this session is recorded, this would be good to have the sound or.
Got it. Yeah. I see. So where do you see that?
Maybe the best way, maybe the best is you send the link and everybody looks at the video, and there maybe it will be quicker maybe.
Okay, and you don't know where the where that setting is that you said of share video sound?
I think it's probably on Vimeo that it's blocking, right? Do you hear yourself?
It's in Zoom. It's in Zoom, somewhere on Zoom, that you have to allow the sharing of the sound of the computer. All sound of the computer are shared, but I cannot find it right now on Zoom.
Okay.
And it's a Teams computer that it has to be done.
We should have.
You need Zoom. You need Zoom desktop. Of course, you need not to be online, but to have
I'm on the desktop.
Okay, if you're on the desktop, to share computer click on share computer sound. So it's not very clear where is this. Where is it? I'm looking in another instruction.
Annoying. I'm really sorry.
How do I share video sound?
Show the high video panel. Edit.
Open your Zoom meeting. Enter. Click on the green share screen icon. You will see a pop-up window where you select before you share a screen. At the moment you share a screen, maybe stop sharing the screen.
I stopped and I start again.
You start again, share the screen, and then in the pop-up window, then you select desktop or application. So
yes,
and then you should
I got it.
Okay.
Optimize screen share for video clip, even better. Okay, so great. We try again. Apologies for the disruption. Zoom audio device. What the heck?
Okay.
Am I on? Okay. Okay. We try again.
Gulliver's Gate is an awe-inspiring miniature world in the heart of New York's Times Square. Visitors can interact with scenes from around the globe, encompassing different time zones and historic periods. See the wonders of the world and a fully functioning futuristic airport, all in the space the size of a football field. Gulliver's Gate has been imagined and created by artisans and craftspeople working in 8 countries on 4 continents. Using classic techniques and materials, along with the latest in 3D printing and video mapping technology, this ambitious dream is now becoming an astounding reality. Come visit, get scanned, and have a miniature version of yourself permanently added to this amazing world.
I hope that worked for everybody.
Yeah, it did.
Okay, so that's the first video. The second one is the current project. And just a quick note, so that did actually open in Times Square, on pretty much on schedule. And I was the artistic director for that. And that was a for-profit business that was officially classified as a museum. And so if I were to call that institutional sculpture, I would call it the institutional sculpture of a museum, but as a project that aimed for transparency, as opposed to occlusion, which I think is a typical engagement of the museum, is of limiting and directing information. And my engagement, whether it was to open and share information. So that's just a brief note on that. And now we go to the second one. Let me see, make sure that I'm sharing the right. Oh, Pierre is here. That's good.
Hi.
And Pierre actually toured Gulliver's Gate when it was still under construction. So he can testify that it is not fake. Okay. Okay, so I will try this one and see, hopefully that this will work. Did it start?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but without sound. Okay, sorry. Go back to sound.
Shout, let it all hang out, but you won't fool the children of the revolution. Now you won't fool the children of the revolution. Well, you tear a plane in the falling rain. Drive a Rolls Royce, cause it's good for my voice, but you won't fool the children of the revolution. Now you won't fool the children of the revolution. Now, no. Yeah!
So that's the new project, current project, and that's a nonprofit that I am executive director of. It's called the RETI Center, as you saw there, Resilience, Education, Training, and Innovation. And the project that is the lead project is Blue City. So I'm just going to take you on a quick tour of the office here. And so this is a photograph of the actual site that we're doing this. It's called GBX, or Gowanus Bay Terminal. And it's in Red Hook, Brooklyn, which is where I'm from, which was the place that was inundated under Superstorm Sandy. It's a peninsula in Brooklyn, and it's very subject to flooding. It has an industrial past, but then very interesting urban planning decisions were made that cut it off from the rest of the city. So it's actually quite famous in culture. It was the setting for The View from the Bridge by Arthur Miller, and also Last Exit to Brooklyn, if you know that film, pretty dire film, but basically about life on the waterfront. On the waterfront with Marlon Brando was also set in Red Hook, though not shot in Red Hook. And so our site is basically an effort to reinvent waterfront industrialization for a new era of equity and environmentalism. So this is a model of the site here. So this is about 40 acres of privately owned land and water. And so owning water in New York City is kind of a rarity and quite special. And so the owner of this property actually conducts his business with this giant ship, which is a floating silo for concrete aggregate, an additive for concrete that improves the ecological impact and the actual physical performance. And he has allocated for us 4 acres of water along this edge here that will be the location of Blue City. And if you follow me over here, looking at some studies of the, let's see, some studies of it. Okay, so the first one is a view of Red Hook gradually going underwater over the course of the next 80 years. And basically, as the water level rises, the geography changes, and what we're aiming for is a positive reuse or adaptation of the land, actually a reversion back to the original form, which was as a salt marsh, essentially, but a salt marsh that can be occupied if properly planned and built. The middle, let's see, go here to the middle graphic is studies for our floating learning center and cultural hub, which will be the first structure that we'll be building. And actually later today, I'm going down, we have an initial pilot project that's kicking off today in observance of Climate Week, and that is a floating classroom that's outdoor COVID-ready learning center that we're constructing right now it's actually on a barge. So it's not a floating building as of yet, but it's the sort of a first step in that direction. And the last one is a diagram, a programming diagram for Blue City's operations, all the people that are involved, what we'll be doing throughout the course of a typical year, and the many different programs that will be run through it. So that's the summary of this institutional sculpture, the Ready Center. And when we were talking, and we'll get into this now with Philippe, we came up with a new term. This is our proposal, is not a utopia, not a dystopia, not a heterotopia, but a teratopia. So the teratopia is the place of the land. And the place of the land is where the factors, the character, the entities of the land are actually definitive of the place. And so if we create the teratopia of Blue City, we will have to be responsive to all the many different threads that lead into it. So it's the actual low-income community. We have the largest public housing project in New York City, in Red Hook. We have the physical environment. We have a highly polluted post-industrial environment that is quite radically underutilized in terms of density, jobs, population. You know, it's one of the least populated areas of the city, so tremendous potential there. And it has a lot of opportunity to reconnect to the natural world and the urban fabric at the same time, with the primary motivating factor being climate change. So climate change has given us this opportunity to change the course of development in this neighborhood that has brought it to its current state. So hopefully we'll be sort of remembering what this place can be and helping it to become more of that in order for allow us to continue to be here, because otherwise we cannot continue to be here. So that's a quick summary of that project. So, Philippe.
Okay, thank you, Tim, for the really clear introduction. I hope everybody, got it. What struck me by discovering this is that Tim worked about this project after writing a book that he didn't talk about it, which was his thesis doctoral thesis, and the book was about the Academy of Forgetting, and he proposed in that institutions. I mean, if I make it very short and very wrongly, of course, I mean institutions are not able to manage or make change happen because they are stuck into their conservative bureaucracy of memory and archiving everything, and that the need is for institution-based or using the potentialities of forgetting and not memorizing everything. And he wrote the book, and he built that book as a construction, a fictitious construction or a utopian construction of what he called an anti-institution. And I would come to you, Tim, now with a question, because with these two projects, first one, this Gulliver's Gate, well, you told me we don't have to go to enter in it, but it was a success for you. You did it, you made it. But as an organizational project, it was a failure because it stopped. It's now undergoing a very dismantling process and so on. And you were you quit the project in the end. Well, it was not a success institutionally. And now you are starting another project, which is a big institutional project, after writing about anti-institutions. Then, of course, it would be easy to go into the paradox that you do what you have criticized before, but I would rather go into this heterotopia, not teratopia yet, but coming back to the heterotopia, which is the title of this conversation. Heterotopia, I mean, according to Foucault, heterotopia is a place where real sites can be found. I mean, I quote exactly Foucault: real sites can be found within the culture, and they are simultaneously represented, contested, and inverted. So heterotopia was conceived as a political countering the power of institutions that are erasing diversity of sites, diversities of point of view, of cultures and things. So heterotopia was conceived as a political statement, giving room and place to all the diversity of realities that is not utopia, because they exist for real. I mean, this political understanding of how you could be someone building this kind of places, of real places, heterotopian places. And we can also think of Rancière, who states that changing the order of things, reconfiguring the political order, the social order into a different one, or proposing that many orders can coexist simultaneously, is typically the aesthesis, according to Rancière. And then he wrote the politics of aesthetics. And so what is your positioning according to this building a kind of heterotopian or aesthetically political institution that has the power or could have the power to change the world, but in a way that making many possible different orders happen instead of erasing and forcing hegemony of one order instead of another?
Yeah, I think that actually Gulliver's Gate performs that function tremendously because it was a physical and material place. It was built at the 1:87 scale, as you saw in the videos. So a person is about this big. And we did try to have many worlds operating simultaneously in it. And the relationship to the actual world was highly fraught with disruptions, contradictions, disconnects. So for example, in our model of Manhattan, we had just the part of lower Manhattan, but then we crunched in all of the kind of cultural icons down to the lower part of Manhattan. And then there was a wrinkle in time at the lower base where there was a line that moved through all of the lower part where history had actually reversed back to the origins of the island. So Manhattan with the Lenape people were occupying a lower portion just down below the Brooklyn Bridge. And as you crossed through, following that line, this wrinkle, you would actually see, you saw the 18th century New York City, and then the early 19th century. So basically there was like this thread that disrupted right through the fabric of the metropolis that we would recognize right now. And then there were also, we planted in, because this was largely an architectural project, we planted in these kind of architectural dreams, these buildings that didn't actually ever get built in New York City, but were in fact intended. Some of our favorite buildings that we kind of wish were there in New York. So you had the past, the present, and the future all existing simultaneously, but they were in many respects impossible paths. The Lenape village where we placed it was not in fact in that geographic location. The future building was not built and is not going to be built. Like it has actually been supplanted by a different building without any kind of architectural intent that the original building aspired to. So these failures, these kind of like continual failures to preserve the memory of the native cultures, to shoot for a higher aesthetic or ideal standard in the building, or to recognize, one of the things that's so interesting about New York is the way that it just constantly erases its own history. It's not like Boston, where you walk around Boston and you just feel like history. I mean, with New York, they're just like planing it off and starting again. You know, it's a little like when you go to visit Jerusalem, or you go to visit Rome, and you just see layers and layers and layers and layers. Somehow with New York, they just don't allow the layers to exist. So our heterotopian vision of Manhattan, and I'm just talking about that one, but it was throughout the whole world of Gulliver's Gate, that we could see these multiple threads running. And I will just say though that it very much was a utopian project, and it did fail, and it failed essentially because of the hyper-capitalistic intentions of the project. And I think that if we want to transition this topic to our next topic that Philippe and I had agreed to talk about, that was the accelerationist idea. And I think we both came in our previous conversation to our own understanding or interpretation of this. I would say, you know, it's a very recent philosophical notion, and I believe quite popular. But I let Philippe take it from here.
Yeah. Okay. I take it from here now. Yeah, because why did we came to this accelerationist notion? First, because I mean, Harman, which is a founder or not the founder, but one of the founder of this movement called speculative realism or object-oriented ontology. He was drawing, I mean, they draw on Deleuze and Latour and after phenomenology. So according to this, the question of how to conceive of another relation to the world, which is totally decentered for the human perspective, and considering objects and the role and the main significance of objects in their withdrawal, in their own existence, selfness, totally irreconcilable and totally disconnected from any other being in the world. This disconnection of beings one with the other are really, I see Elen making many signs, and it's disturbing, so I don't know if it's for me or anything.
No, she's watching Pierre introduce his dog.
Okay, because I don't have Pierre's on my screens. Okay.
Well, resist French bulldogs. I'm absolutely sorry. It's that style just I can't resist.
Because Alma, she's very interested in phenomenology.
That's great, because of course in the object-oriented ontology, dogs are as important as men or women, and chairs and tables and computers and stones and everything have the same understanding of the world, if I make it very short. Okay, this is just a parenthèse. Okay, but coming from this very philosophical, very serious philosophical movement, recent movement, that is trying to reconsider the deep existential meaning of community and sharing of the word based on criticizing the phenomenological approach and post-Heideggerian and Deleuzian approach. Okay, this is very serious philosophical movement, but stemming from that, there was, and you probably heard about the accelerationist move. That was a political statement that has been kind of successful in the left or the left wing in politics. That is, you need to accelerate capitalistic trends in order to overpass it, and in order to get to have the real opportunity to maybe see the rise of a new society, building this on acceleration. And when Tim was talking about hyper-capitalistic aspect, dimension of Gulliver's Gate, we came to this questioning: could this kind of artistic behaviors, artistic practices, like accelerating, because you're an artist, you have the power to accelerate the building of a city on water, for example, the Blue City, or creating, like I did, a new academic journal that is totally outside the rule, the academic rules, but you have the possibility as an artist to shortcut all the institutional lines and build a kind of accelerated institution that is both an institution and at the same time totally trespassing and disrespecting and dysfunctioning the institutional lines. But then, this was my question: are you, Tim? Am I myself? Are we with that kind of art which is trying to go beyond the emotional sharing of community and building the common and the community, common action onto, let's build something different and let's go directly to it. Don't try to change the existing institution, but try to build directly new way of living, new way of describing, of relating one to another. Could it be that we are then in this accelerationist trend, which is very, very, I would be very critical against that, because this acceleration is generally not considering the suffering, the individual difficulties, the empathy to what's happening here and now, because they are focused onto what will happen next. So it's very questioning. If you focus on making things happening quicker and in a Deleuzian way, I mean, actualizing the virtual, what happened to the present, to the bodies, to the suffering bodies that are now trapped into the real institutions? So Tim, how will you relate with the Blue City to those questions and not being trapped into a kind of post-utopian way of building the future world, which will be, of course, like any human world, a suffering world, an oppressing world, and an imperfect institution on its term?
Yeah. I think that interestingly, Ellen recently published an essay of ours in her book on art and politics that looked at an idea from Giorgio Agamben, the coming community, as reinterpreted by a disrupting movement called the Invisible Committee, and they wrote this book called The Coming Insurrection, which then fomented the Occupy movement. But the principal idea of the Invisible Committee was not to accelerate, but was to in fact delay, to disrupt. And so that the flow of when I read the Accelerationist Manifesto after having spent a lot of time thinking about Occupy and what Occupy was trying to do, I felt that there was a tremendous conflict and tension between these two opposite views. And I feel that there was an experiment in the formation of communism that tried accelerationist techniques, you know, the radical industrialization of the country that did exactly the things that Philippe is talking about. And like, for example, if you were to read the Gulag Archipelago, to me, it typifies an accelerationist practice, right? You take the people that society doesn't want, need, accept, put them into a dire situation and make them work faster in order to make the future come. Make the future come, you know, building factories in the middle of the winter in Siberia, you know, at the expense of any kind of humanity, turning people into the automatons, the homo sacer, the Musulman. And we cannot accept acceleration. We cannot accept speed at that price. And I think that we've been living at that velocity, and that velocity has brought us the backlash of the natural factors that are accentuating the risk for us to occupy the places that we have decided in the last few hundred years, 200-300 years, are good places to occupy. And we cannot occupy these places, danger places from a natural world perspective, without absorbing the risk that goes along with it. And those who absorb the risk are those who are most vulnerable. And the most vulnerable, the ones who are most impacted, are the ones who cannot extract themselves upon a whim. Those are those who must stay in place. So the big difference between Blue City and many of these other floating, there are quite a few floating community ideas being proposed, because as the water rises, we have to do something about it. Many of them are like utopian escape pods, that they take a certain population and they put them into an isolated circumstance. This is a kind of an Atlantis idea. Those who do not have to worry about what's happening on land, you know. And if you've read Gulliver's Travels, it's Laputa. It's this floating castle in the sky. It's this city that extracts itself. And it was a metaphor for Swift of London. And London floats over Ireland, where Swift was from, and they threaten it by that they'll just cast a shadow over the land, stop the rain, you know, do whatever they want, or actually lower down and crush the buildings below. So I feel like that many of these, whether it's a Mars colony or Oceanics, which is this floating community, these are things that float away and retain power. Blue City is anchored to a community that is on the margins already, and it takes this borderline between the urban and the natural, and there's a line that's the water, and it makes it into a zone, a transitional zone, where the water, the people, the community, the commerce can all actually interact within a mutually beneficial system. So it takes time. The city is not ready to accept this reality. According to the city, it is actually detrimental to the natural environment. So part of our work is to show that it's beneficial to natural environment. Funding comes from nonprofit organizations. They want to see how it's beneficial to the community, because operating in New York City, it automatically operates within the paradigm of real estate development. Real estate development is consistently, historically, problematic for many populations. It disenfranchises. Gentrification is one of the primary functions of the visual artist in New York City. We are agents of gentrification. So we come into these industrial, post-industrial spaces. We use these post-industrial real estate to change its value, rank it great, you know, crank it up, which is exactly what's happening in Red Hook, in order to lay the groundwork for high-end residential, market rate residential, which effectively pushes out diversity. And the diversity is what actually makes resilience. It makes the urban fabric possible to live through shocks like provided to us by the natural world. And without this interwoven fabric, this complex fabric of different cultures, different socioeconomic groups, different mindsets, we end up with a monoculture that's very easily wiped out. And we can see this in agriculture. We can see this in, you know, the sort of the white flight of the dissolution of New York City in the 70s and 80s. And then it just, we have to recover and we have to re-diversify and actually, in order to push through. And so our effort is to take all of those different threads and weave it together in order to make a stronger fabric.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. I would just add one word. For me, the interest of your experiment and what you've told here today is that we need the multiple orders to coexist and the marginality not to be erased or incorporated into the mainstream. But what is interesting and what you are trying to materialize is that there are many possible relation to the natural order, and we mistook that for centuries. We took one relationship to the natural order, one only possible, and now we are trying to replace that one with another dominant paradigm for what is our relation to the natural order, what is the natural order. But what we need now is to really recognize our ignorance and the fact that natural order is wrong, it's natural orders, and that we need to, as human species, to really focus on making room for any kind of natural orders. And how do we relate to those with our diversities, personal diversities, the diversity of natural orders, and the philosophical issue then is how to conceive of that, how not to answer by one answer of what is nature, what is an order, but how do we relate? And then this is why the speculative realism stemming from Deleuze and Latour is much more interesting than the accelerationist the derivative product, I should say. Okay, I think we stop here with the conversation with the team, and I think it's really time to get to the audience question, because I'm sure there are many interesting reactions. So it would be really nice to hear you all asking questions and making comments, because we need it.
Fantastic. That was really great. And I didn't know that last project, so I'm so happy it's there now. You are
come visit.
Great. I would.
Everyone is welcome.
I'm dying to. Who else wants to speak and say whatever they want? Because I have the chance. I can talk later, but Pierre, go ahead.
I mean, I think this is fantastic. I mean, what comes up in the conversation is well worth recording, diffusing, working on as a research sort of base. But this enlightened idea on the hyper-capitalism, you're saying, Tim, that Gulliver's Gate flopped because it was an acceleration project, and now you're doing another project which is more, according to Philippe, in the Deleuzian thing. I mean, it's phenomenology taken to the concrete in a fantastic way. Thanks a lot. I'm excited. That's all.
Thank you, Pierre.
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, Madeleine.
Yeah.
Madeleine, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, fantastic projects. You know, we need these kind of experimental, you know, forms of utopias. And the first part brought up the question of community and institution. I found this quite revealing, and also the need to operate in an institutionalized world, but also to re-institutionalize. You know, Merleau-Ponty has this, you know, this tension between being in an institutionalized environment, but also re-institutionalizing, re-instigating, re-institutingly, and this means incorporating in new ways. So I found this, and this is the problem of the communitarian approaches. If you have a set of values and you become conservative. So this means the commons, the community, in order to be alive and an embodied, vivid community, needs to.
You're breaking up, Madeleine.
Yeah, Madeleine, we've lost you.
Frozen.
Probably a problem of connection.
Yes, I think.
Demo effect. We've been having quite many of those. Anyone
Okay.
wants to?
Yeah, I think Madeleine will come back, but we have
Yeah.
this question in mind. You will probably come back, so maybe someone else can have the floor in between.
I don't know, but maybe if we shut down our videos, it helps. I don't know. This is maybe just mythology, but
I don't know.
Ah, Madeleine is coming back apparently.
Mr. Grelier.
Hervé has
just a thing. For me, it's fascinating, these projects that you're talking about. And northern Spain, in the Basque Country, in Bilbao, Frank Gehry had come because of the Guggenheim Museum. And Tim and Philippe, you have to come there because there is a very industrialized zone, and they are removing all the things to do something more grounded with the people. And I was thinking about what was saying Wendeling. In Mondragon, in the case of Mondragon, then not the community not was hoping much about the institutions, about the states, about they do, and by doing, the process has been institutionalized. But the first forces were to dream in an utopia. In a management world, it was not possible to do this utopia. It become a reality. Nowadays it's like a model for this. So utopia. Let's go ahead. Thank you very much. It's very exciting for your what you are sharing. Thank you.
Thank
you, Hervé.
Wendeline, do you want to finish your remark? We didn't hear the last of what you said.
For me?
Wendeline.
Yes, yeah. Sorry, I was interrupted. Suddenly the connection was, interrupted. The digital community is quite challenging in a way.
I know.
We need artistic projects to reconsider the connection between community, and institution and institutionalizing. We need to reinvent community all the time. There cannot be a community. You know, any entity called community is dead in a way, and so this project showed that. So reinventing, reinstitutionalizing, reinstigating in radically deforming and transforming ways is perhaps also what communities of the future as processes are. Communities, commonality as an activity, as a process. By artistic projects. So that's what I really want revealing here.
But if they're not, we're saying they shouldn't be accelerated, then what is the relationship between the process and the community?
Well, I'm voting for letting go, for a releasement, an engaged, not indifferent and not irresponsible letting go, not accelerating, but allowing also things to happen which are not, determined in advance. And acceleration is determined, it's still teleological. And so, that's my approach, and I will speak about this afternoon later. Allowing the body and sensation, a kind of post-Rancièrean idea of sharing the sensible in ways which are unforeseen, which is not even destroying the capitalistic system by acceleration, but allowing the unusual, the different,
may I?
So go ahead, Pierre.
Yeah, just this enlightened discussion around the Gulliver's Gate. To me, when I visited it, it was still coming to reality, and Tim was showing this place in the building site at Times Square. It was one of the most fantastic guided tours I ever made. And then what happened, as you're saying, Tim, this was an hyper-capitalistic, and as you say, Philip, hyper-capitalistic acceleration, suicide of capitalism too. Because it was a failure on all accounts. It was a failure for those guys who thought they would get big bucks out of this. It was a failure for, of course, for you, Tim, who you kicked out. The artist was kicked out of his work. And that was a dramatical, completely stupid thing. But I mean, the acceleration, in a sense, it works. It's to destroy the capitalism. I mean, that is old chicken soup Marx, maybe, but
no, but it was a great benefit, because ultimately all of the people who made all of those displays got paid. And the reason that I ended up getting fired was because I shared credit. Like at the end of that video, all the credits ran and listed the hundreds and hundreds of people that were involved. I was told I was not allowed to put that into the display when it went public. So we had used them all the way along to like build credibility. And then when it came to the actual display, the CEO told me, you cannot list all those names. And I listed them, and he walked in on Monday morning after the opening and he saw it. I hadn't seen it before, and he fired me that day. But
so that's
to me,
the end of
credits,
cooperation, huh?
Yeah, and then the benefit was that the company then, over the course of the next year and a half or so, it ate itself. It fired that CEO. They hired the son of the chief investor as the CEO. They fired him. His father had to fire him, who was the main investor. He then took it over. $40 million was put into this thing. And when it went under, most of that value was lost. They're trying to sell it now. You can get it at a garage sale. They're trying to put it into a mall in New Jersey, but I don't think that's going to happen. But one of the best things that happened was the building is owned by Jared Kushner.
Oh.
And that was an $18 million project. And Jared got really screwed. So, and this building could come very close to actually bankrupting the Kushner properties, because every project in that building has sunk. It was a $5 million a year rent for that space.
Well, I think we soon have to conclude, but I'm maybe if I want to add my comment, I have to teach now a class which I really had no competence over, which is called process management. And I did something completely different, but to illustrate the power of process over plan and planning. And I think there are so many things, and when reformists try to reform, they will try to, for instance, limit the rent or do things which are already in the system, in the plan, that can hardly really change the things for people. And I really like what you do. When you can't really radically change things, it has to collapse and fail, and it produces some interesting failure produces extremely interesting results, consequences. So it's very positive. Bravo. Dysfunction.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for the forum for this. It always helps push the thinking about the work, because there's a lot of hands-on stuff that happens. So to have the moment to discuss and to have an amazing audience like this, I would like to hear everybody say more. But this is when we all go for coffee in a normal conference and drink coffee, and everybody talks about everything. And this is lost.
Yes.
Where's our forum? Where's our coffee break?
We'll all come to visit, not using a plane, of course. So we'll take like a boat, maybe.
Yeah.
A cargo to visit.
Exactly.
With
a
coffee.
sailboat,
Yeah,
like
great
Greta
Greta.
Thunberg, travel around the world by sailboat. It's a slow process.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Philippe. Thank you, team. I hope I see you this afternoon. And I hope you remember all the great books that we discussed and all the great art pieces. And I hope you stay with us for the rest of the day. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Super. See
Have
you
a good day.
later.
So Philip, thank you so much.
Ah, you're still here. That's great.
I'm here. Yeah.
I
just
think
wanted to say.
I thought that Ellen would have cut all, because generally when I mean, I thought she has cut for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. We didn't follow the plan, but we tackled all the
Wow.
topics in a even much more interesting sense. And yeah, great.
I feel
Thank
like
you.
we hit everything. I think we hit everything in the outline, right?
Oh, yeah, we tackled everything in a different
Yeah.
order, which is
Yeah.
great. And
Yeah.
and I think the reaction and the comments, we didn't have so many, but there were people who were very interested by what we did. And for me, it raised these very interesting questions. I mean, this question of institutional sculpture of art is something I'm interested in for so many years, and it has been not very much observed or commented in the art world. And I think it raises very interesting questions. Very interesting because very dangerous. It can collapse. It's not for sure. It's a big amount of risk in it. So I love it for that. It's very risky.
And I always think about your intervention into the performance by
Yeah.
Where you broke the rules. You know, he breaks the rules and he says, look, we don't document, you know, I resist this institution, and then becomes an institution himself. And your gesture to then break his rule and to come in, I feel like it's the kind of thing that he should be confronted with, just to say, like, what have you done to this population? You have operationalized this human resource and negated it as individualities, essentially. You take away your agency.
And especially when we say, but this comes to my mind right now by listening to you, breaking the rules. When we did our performance at EGOS and launching this function, and we had a lot of discussion after that in our small editorial team about should we institutionalize ourselves? Should we belong or start a closer relationship to an institution? And we are fighting against this. We are fighting one against the other because it's not easy to answer. But the fact is, breaking the rules can be a practice that counter the institutionalization. Kind of, if I should put it in a rather paradoxical way, for me, it's kind of a deinstitutionalizing and institutionalizing always together at the same time and each minute, which is very difficult to manage first, to succeed in second. And I think this is the challenge that artists could try to tackle. How can they institutionalize their action and at the same time deinstitutionalize it? It's for me a very interesting question that arises from our talk today and from Wendelin's question, and I think for people outside the practice, outside the making and the art, it becomes a kind of theoretical question that is very difficult to answer theoretically. But in your practice, in the practice I'm trying to develop as well, we are trying to make it. The theory then can try to say something, but making this happen is very interesting and very difficult. We have an artist some 20 years ago in France. He was a photographer, a conceptual artist. he was making, I don't know even what he was making, conceptual photography or something like that. And then he came to the fact that he was interested in processes rather than the result of his work. And he ended up by creating a big institution in France, which is called Les Nouveaux Commanditaires, the new, how could you say, the new
Commanditaire.
The new mandataire, the new sponsors, kind of this, the new sponsors. And he was, so the plan was that anybody, any citizen, any small association, any group of friends, any company as well, anyone, any group of people, not individual, but any group of people could become a sponsor for an artwork for any reason, in any kind of place, anything. So he was creating this institution for helping this to happen. And of course, and he was proposing this as an artwork. So he wrote a small book, which was the announcement and the rules and the manifesto of this new thing that happened maybe 15, 20 years ago. And then since that, he became the director, the executive and CEO of this big institution that has become since a very formal, official institution that has been doing the contrary and the opposite of what it was supposed to do. Not totally. It still is of a very big interest, but in a way, it was a failure, mainly because in order to help those very common people, very ordinary, very average people to be able to become sponsor, his idea was that you need an intermediary. You need someone to make the connection between average people and artists, which is not wrong in a way, but then these people became the men in power or the women in power, and they are commanding the networks, choosing their artists, forbidding something to happen, allowing something to happen, and all this behind a discourse about the very open-minded possibility for everybody to become sponsor of any kind of art for any kind of purpose and blah, blah, blah. So it was very interesting, but it is another example of institutionalization and deinstitutionalization at the same time as an artwork. And I have some example in mind like this for years, and yours, of course, is the most recent one. And I think there is something to be done about thinking about all this. Your book is the first one, I think, and we have to maybe to do something with Pierre and Elen to try to do something, to formalize something about this anti and institutionalization at the same time, which is very, very, and then it is rapid. It's not accelerating, but it's very quick loop that has to be, we have to loop, I don't know any concept, any theoretical concept that would fit in, but I feel it like kind of bodily. I mean, you are always in this upscaling, descaling, and building, debuilding, building, destroying, and all these kind of paradoxical two direction at the same time. I don't know. Well, I'm talking because I'm trying to think, I thought.
Yeah, no, it's important. And actually you made me think about several things while you were speaking, because I've been trying to the next work that I've been hoping to write and haven't written and haven't really made much headway on is the book Institutional Sculpture, to look at a history of it, like an art history. An art history of institutional sculpture. Who has done it? How have they done it? How has it failed? I mean, what is the relationship between the institution and the anti-institution? So I think that, and it's the question that you're coming up with your newspaper, and I think that with this Nouvelle Commanditaire, that it does, the day after the revolution, the revolutionary becomes the dictator. Right?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
So as this, you know, process-oriented disruptor
Yes.
begins to institutionalize his own disruption and his own process, that becomes the institution. But the failure of the anti-institution and the absorption into the institution, which we talked about before, it's not a bad thing, because the institution is, you know, it is a human operation. It's just whether that human operation actually facilitates benefit or does not facilitate benefit.
Yes.
And so the failure of the institution is when it is not instrumental, when it is an endless delay, you know, where it doesn't actually accomplish. But an institution that is empowered by connection, it functions. It's just a large function. It's a large human function.
No, you're
And
right. You're right.
that's the positive view of the institution,
Yeah,
that we
exactly.
don't feel, that we resist, that we're afraid of.
Now that's really amazing, and I think we should pursue on this track and try to think of it and try to go on this project of yours, or the book of the institutional sculpture. And of course, it reminds me of Beuys, who was talking about social sculpture. So,
oh, sure, yeah. I mean, and when I think about Beuys, I specifically think about the art school that he was trying to form as he got, and he was, so I was an artist in residence at the Irish Museum of Modern Art in Dublin.
Okay.
That building was modeled on Versailles, and it was an army hospital. So it was for people who came out of the army and were either so badly injured or they were old and they needed a retirement home. And so it was amazing, like the flip, you know, so you had the proletariat, you had the veterans, and not the officers, just like actual enlisted men who were injured or incapacitated in whatever degree, were put into this model of Versailles and allowed to, you know, sort of live out their days there. And then Beuys came, and it was just a big empty building, and he said, I want to turn this into my art school. And it didn't ultimately succeed, which is actually good, you know, that there was another failure. And then it became the Irish Museum of Modern Art.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's
and to me, that is Beuys', you know, engagement with the anti-institution that I'm so interested in, because I think that we look, go ahead.
Yeah, you have also, we could also think, for me, Beuys, he was not the only one, but he was one of the founders of the Green Party in Germany, who was the first real ecological political force in Europe, and that had a really big influence. And he never talked, as far as I know, he never talked about this creating the Green Party as an artwork, an art activity, but it was so strongly connected to all his other art activities, like the school or like planting the oaks, things like that, that I always thought of this as the most important work of art by Beuys. And it could be also related to this reflection of about institutional sculptures. I like this. I have to leave now, so I really have another meeting. But let's keep that in mind, and I'm sure that Wendelin and Pierre would be very much interested in going further into reflecting and digging up into this topic, because it's really interesting, and it can give. First, it can help us to better know how to do this and to go on, and it can help also the reflection and the theoretical, pushing forward. Hope so.
Yeah. Is it the original Green Party that he helped to found?
Yeah,
the first one?
As far as I know, yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about success beyond art.
Yeah, and there are many things like that. There is also this American artist, I can't remember, he has an Indian name, kind of difficult to remember, but you probably heard about him. He's a conceptual artist, and his last artwork was to be elected, to become elected as mayor of a
Yeah.
small city in the state.
Yeah.
You know that, and destroying the
do.
city.
It's destroying the
Erasing.
city?
Not erasing. His purpose as a mayor was to make the city disappear and being absorbed by the neighbors. So dissolution, bankrupting the city itself, and it was his purpose as a mayor.
Did he say that overtly?
Yes, not for being elected, but he published a book after that, and he made it with the approval of the population and the board and everybody.
The publication of the book was allowed by the population.
I don't know about that.
But so the idea that the city was being dissolved was accepted by the population. It was like
it was voted by the population. It was a democratic decision by the population.
But that was his intent going in, or
Yes.
That's what happened.
Yes, that was his intention. Raivo Pusemp. Yeah, that is. I will find the reference of this.
Yes, I've heard about it. I can't remember whether it was your conversation and mine or some other one where this was brought up to me. I mean, I know several artists who've gotten involved in politics.
Rosendale. It's Rosendale. There's the name of the book. I don't know. It's Raivo Pusemp. Raivo. We'll send you. We'll find this. And Rosendale by Raivo Pusemp. You can download Raivo Pusemp.
Oh, I know who it was. It was I took this class at the Node Center in Berlin it just ended last week, and They were talking about him. They were talking about him there. Yeah. So I have that in my notes.
So the book is a collection of official documents. Yeah, you can find it on I know a digital art collection where I have a book myself, and it's Art Book Magazine. So you can find it. You can download it for free on Art Book Magazine. This is the name of the editors of the publisher. It's a digital publisher in art. They are friends of me. They're really good. And the book is called Beyond Art: Dissolution of Rosendale. And it's done by Raivo Pusemp, Stephen Wright, who we're talking about, and the studio, the Art Book Magazine studio. And this is a book that you can find.
Great. Thank you.
I can copy the link on the Zoom, but then I will have to quit afterwards because students are waiting for me. Okay. Then you got the link, I think, here. No. I'll do it again. It doesn't work.
And do you know anything about, last thing is, do you know anything about Elen Badiou's activist work?
About who?
Elen Badiou?
No, I'm not good at all. I don't know Elen Badiou's work, so no, I cannot.
But it's not about his philosophy. It's about his work as an activist.
I don't know.
Very interesting. He's spoken about it. I don't know if he's written about it, but he was one of my professors, and we got to hear about.
Okay.
And to me, it was more interesting than his artwork, than his philosophy. Excuse me.
Okay.
I found his philosophy to be oppressive, and I found his activism to be enlightening. Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't know. I will look for it.
Yeah. I'll try to see if there's something published. So.
Okay, that was great.
Thank you so much.
It was really great. And probably we will follow up on this together and with other people, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Tim, so much.
You made this event for me, Philippe. Thank you. You really did.
You made it for me, and it tackles my ideas and many things, so I'm sure something will come out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Now we need to quit. Did you copy the link? Because if I quit, maybe it will...
I have it. No, I got it. I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.